take a few minutes here to go over the brief exercises, and we're not going to work through them, we'll really just sort of talk through them and see the logic of them. This is what we did in class on campus, and they found it helpful. I'm actually running stuff by them first to say, was that a good idea? Did that help? And they said, yeah, that helped. So here we go. All right, so I'm doing the brief exercises that go with learning objective 2, and this has to do with variable consideration. So you have this, let's see, brief oh, okay. It would help if I am looking at the right one. It's over here. Okay. All right, so Nair Corp enters a contract to build an apartment building for $1 million. The customer who's buying it hopes to rent apartments at the beginning of the school year and offers a bonus of $150,000 if it's ready by August 1st. Bonus is reduced $50,000 each week after that. So based on past experience, that's Nair Corp's past experience, the company comes up with these probabilities. 70% chance it's going to be done by August 1st, in which case they'll collect the $1 million plus the $150,000 bonus. And then there's a 20% chance it'll be done a week later, in which case it drops to 1.1, and then and so forth, 5% chance it's a whole month behind. So based on that, you're trying to determine the contract price for the building, and using the weighted average, probabilities, you would multiply across here, and you would come up with $1,127,500 that you would recognize for revenue. This is, there's different possible outcomes. They've got fairly solid experience and information to indicate that these are the likely probabilities of those outcomes, and so this is the way that they can arrive at their revenue number. Okay, so now, or the transaction price. Okay, so now let's look at the next one, which is 7, which is the same information, except that Nair Company does not have the ability to get a reliable estimate. Maybe they've never done a project like this before, in which case they would use the most likely outcome. And so they would book their revenue of 1.150, and that would be the most likely estimate of the transaction price. But because they have limited experience on this, they wouldn't end up booking the revenue until the project was actually completed. Okay, so there's a little difference between transaction price and actually when you recognize the revenue. Okay, let's look at 8, brief exercise 8. This is just determining transaction prices, and these are fairly straightforward. If you're selling $1 million of goods, payment due at delivery, that's when the revenue is recognized. You sell goods on account, payment within 30 days, that's a normal sales transaction. You would recognize the $800,000 on the date of sale, and you'd have an accounts receivable. They sell goods for $500,000, payment due in 2 installments, the first in 18 months and then 6 months later, and the present value of all of those future payments is $464. So here you've got the distinction between the amount that's actually sales revenue and the amount that is interest related to the sort of extended payment terms. So in this case, you'd recognize the $462, the present value of all those payments on the date of the sale, and you would recognize the interest over the next 24 months involved. Okay, so moving on. This is a similar one with extended payment terms. This is 18.9. So they sell goods. Adani sells goods to Geo. 0 interest-bearing note. We know that 0 interest-bearing means it does bear interest. They just don't tell you how much. The fair value of the goods sold at the date of sale is $10,000. Okay, so that fair value is what you are looking for as the sales revenue. So you're going to have the note receivable for the full $11,000. You're going to have discount on notes receivable. They've told you that the interest would be $1,000. Well, you figure the interest would be $1,000. And then sales revenue would be the 10,000. You do your cost of goods sold and inventory, and then at the end of the year, you would go discount on notes receivable and interest, book the interest revenue. And then on January 1st, the next day, you'd receive the cash and the note receivable would be satisfied. Okay, so if you have questions on any of these, you can always email me. Okay. All right, so there's that one. For brief exercise 10, let's see what's going on here. Did I say I would do 10? Yes. This is also another one with extended payment terms. Another zero interest bearing note, except with bigger numbers, and it follows exactly the same pattern, where you're bringing on the note receivable, the sales revenue is the fair value amount. Make sure you're computing the interest on this amount, not that amount. This amount, the 1 million, that number includes the interest. So this is the number that you're computing the interest on. So you're going to 600,000 times 10% times 10/12 to get the interest revenue that's been on that note since March 1st. Okay, so that takes us through the brief exercises on that. And I think I'm going to do a separate one on the exercises.